Have you ever felt the ache of being touched and still unseen? As if someone's hands could find your skin, but not your soul. There is a kind of silence that lives inside these moments. A silence that whispers, "This is not enough. Not enough to be wanted. Not enough to be held. Not enough to be touched if the touch doesn't carry truth." So many women carry this hunger. A hunger not for more affection, but for depth, for presence, for a kind of intimacy that doesn't end when the lights go off. What they long for is to be felt, deeply, completely, beyond the surface, to be sensed, not as a body to be desired, but as a presence to be revered. But somewhere along the way, we were taught to use the body as currency, to believe that pleasure equals love, that if we offer enough softness, enough heat, enough beauty, maybe then we'll be chosen, maybe then we'll be seen. And yet, night after night, some part of us remains untouched, some part of us still waiting. Louise Hay once said, "The key to all our relationships is within us," and maybe that's why we keep circling back to the same ache, because something within still questions its own worth, still believes it needs to prove something to be loved, still confuses being wanted with being valued. And when a woman carries that confusion, her touch becomes a question, a silent plea. Do you see me now? Am I enough for you now? But love that must be earned through seduction is never safe, because the moment we stop performing, we fear we'll be abandoned. There's a quiet grief in realizing that what we were offering was not intimacy, but a performance, that what we hoped would open his heart was only grazing the surface, because the energy that truly touches a man, the energy that melts his defenses and calls forth his surrender, is not sexual. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's the energy of a woman who knows who she is when no one is watching. Brené Brown speaks of this kind of connection when she says, "Vulnerability is the bridge between two hearts." And maybe that's what has been missing. Not more technique, not more giving, but more truth, more presence, more self-belonging. Because the real power, the kind that awakens devotion, not just desire, doesn't live in the body. It lives in your energy, in your voice, in the way you occupy your own silence. And the moment you begin to touch from that place, from the soul, not the skin, something shifts. He may not know why. He may not have words for it, but he will feel it. And when a man truly feels, that's when he begins to surrender. You can be touched and still feel invisible. It's a strange kind of emptiness, to have someone's hands on you, and yet to feel a deep, cold silence in your chest. To be admired, even craved, and still wonder, but do you see me? Do you really see who I am? There are moments when the body is lit up with attention, but the soul remains in the shadows. Moments when you smile and respond and pretend to enjoy, but inside, something recoils, something whispers, "This is not the touch I need." Many women know this feeling, the loneliness that can creep in even during intimacy, because when the connection is only skin deep, it doesn't feed you, it drains you. You give and give and give, and somehow feel emptier afterward. That's not intimacy. That's exposure without recognition. And when this happens over and over, it begins to hurt. Not in obvious ways, but quietly, slowly, like a part of you fading, a part that used to hope, used to dream of a love that felt safe, sacred, mutual. You begin to question your own needs. You wonder if maybe you're asking for too much, or worse, if maybe you're just not worth being truly seen. But here's the quiet truth. You are not invisible. You've simply been offering your light in places that were never meant to hold it. You've been hoping to be seen by someone who only looks with his eyes, not with his heart. And that is not your failure. That is your awakening. Because the soul knows when it's not being met. The body might comply. The lips might smile. But deep inside, something always knows. And that knowing is your compass. That knowing is your wisdom. That knowing is what brings you back to yourself. And maybe it's time to ask, not just, does he want me? But, do I feel seen here? Do I feel safe? Do I feel sacred? Because when you are truly seen, there's no need to perform. There's no need to offer more than you are. You simply exist, and that is enough. And in the spaces where you are not seen, it's not your beauty that's lacking. It's the depth of perception on the other side. Remember that. Hold it close. Because being touched should never make you feel invisible. It should bring you home to yourself. There's often a hidden plea behind your sensuality. Not loud, not obvious, but it's there, quietly pulsing beneath each gesture, each touch, each effort to be close. It says, "Please, see me. See the woman I am behind this body." And it's not manipulation. It's not strategy. It's longing. A deep and aching longing to be mirrored, not just in desire, but in presence, in reverence. So many women were never taught to value their emotional landscape. They were told they had to be beautiful to be loved, desirable to be wanted, pleasing to be kept. And so, they learned to lead with the body, because that's what got the response. That's what got the attention. That's what created the illusion of connection, even when the soul remained untouched. But here's the hard part. You can't ask a man to see the depths you haven't yet claimed for yourself. If you only know your worth through his gaze, if you only feel powerful when you're wanted, then his presence becomes your mirror. And that mirror is fragile. That mirror breaks the moment he looks away. So what happens when you begin to see yourself differently? When you stop asking, "Am I enough for him?" and start wondering, "Is this enough for me?" That's when the plea begins to fade. That's when the sensuality is no longer a cry for recognition, but an expression of presence, of fullness, of sovereignty. And that shift is not subtle. A man may not know how to name it, but he will feel it. He will feel the difference between a woman who is reaching out to be seen and a woman who is already home within herself. Because when your sensuality is no longer rooted in need, it becomes something sacred. It's no longer a question. It's a statement, a quiet, embodied truth. I know who I am, and if you are ready to meet me here, I am open. But if not, if he cannot meet you, cannot hold you, cannot see you, you no longer shatter, you no longer shrink, you no longer wait for a reflection to confirm your light, because you've already claimed it. And that is the most magnetic energy of all. Why doesn't he surrender? Even when you give him everything, you offer your time, your tenderness, your body, your silence when he pulls away, your forgiveness when he returns. You give and give and give until the giving becomes a way of life, a quiet sacrifice dressed as devotion. And still, something in him remains distant, unmoved, closed. It's heartbreaking to realize that no matter how much you pour into someone, it doesn't guarantee their depth. It doesn't unlock their heart, because a man doesn't surrender to effort. He doesn't soften because you've proven you're worthy. He surrenders when he feels safe, not in your perfection, but in your wholeness, in the truth that you are not offering yourself to be chosen. You are standing in yourself to be honored. This is where the dynamic shifts. When a woman gives everything hoping for love, she becomes invisible within her own longing. But when she gives nothing away that compromises her dignity, when she holds her presence like a quiet flame, she becomes undeniable. Not because she demands to be seen, but because her presence commands it. A man senses when a woman is still waiting to be validated. He may not say it out loud. He may not even understand it consciously, but he feels it. That quiet urgency beneath her generosity. That fear of being left if she ever stops giving. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop giving from fear and begin holding from truth, the energy shifts. You are no longer available for half love. You are no longer waiting for scraps of attention. You are no longer trying to earn what should be freely given. And that, more than anything, is what calls a man into depth. Not your surrender, but your self-possession. Not your giving, but your groundedness. Because a man will only truly surrender to a woman who is not afraid to lose him. A woman who is so rooted in her own soul, she no longer needs to perform to be loved. She is love, and he either meets her there or watches her walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet, holy certainty. There's something magnetic about a woman who carries herself with quiet certainty. Not loud, not flashy, just present, grounded, whole. She walks into a room and doesn't need to be the most beautiful, the most charming, the most anything, because her energy speaks before her words do. And that energy, that emotional aura, is what makes a man stay. It's not about what she wears. It's not about what she gives. It's about what she knows, about herself, about love, about what she will and will not hold. And that knowing radiates. It doesn't chase. It doesn't plead. It simply exists, like a steady flame that warms, but never burns itself out for someone else's comfort. Men may not articulate it, but they feel it. The difference between a woman who needs to be chosen and a woman who has already chosen herself. The former invites attention. The latter evokes devotion. Because devotion doesn't grow in the soil of desperation. It doesn't bloom in the shadow of self-abandonment. It takes root in presence, in boundaries, in truth. And truth has its own gravity. That's why some women seem to touch something deeper in a man without even trying. They're not performing. They're not seducing. They're just being, fully, unapologetically, authentically. Louise Hay said, "We are each responsible for all of our experiences. That includes the energy we emit, the self-perception we carry, the messages we send without words. When a woman embodies the belief that she is enough, that she is worthy, sacred, and complete, she becomes magnetic, not because she needs to be desired, but because she is deeply aligned with herself. And that alignment is rare. It's rare, and it's irresistible, because it reminds him of something he has forgotten. It calls him into a place he didn't know he missed. And in that space, surrender doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like truth, like home. Sometimes, touch becomes transactional. Not because you meant it that way, not because you lack depth, but because deep down, you're hoping your tenderness will buy you something more. A deeper bond, a little more closeness, a promise, even if unspoken. And it's so subtle. The way we trade affection for attention. The way we offer our softness with the silent hope it will soften him. The way we give, not from overflow, but from ache, from longing, from the quiet fear that if we stop giving, we might be forgotten. But love, when it becomes currency, loses its sanctity. When we touch with the expectation of return, it's no longer intimacy, it's negotiation. And negotiation always carries tension, the fear of being shortchanged, the fear that what we gave wasn't enough to receive what we needed most. Louise Hay reminds us, nothing external can fill the void of self-rejection. And how many of us have tried to fill the silence with sweetness, tried to quiet the doubt with desire, tried to feel chosen by giving more than we had to give. It's a cycle that doesn't heal. It only deepens the wound, because every time you offer your body hoping to feel safe and still feel empty afterward, the inner message becomes louder. Something must be wrong with me. But it's not you. It never was. It's the belief that you must earn what should be freely given, that your worth is measured by his response, that your place in his heart is secured by what you're willing to surrender. But real connection doesn't ask for that kind of sacrifice. Real intimacy doesn't feel like bargaining. It feels like breathing, like being, like arriving as you are, and still being held. So if you found yourself offering touch, when what you truly crave is presence, don't judge yourself. Just pause. Return. Ask gently, what am I hoping he'll give me that I've stopped giving to myself? That question doesn't accuse. It liberates. It brings you back to the truth. You were never meant to beg for love through gestures. You were meant to be met, soul to soul, not skin to skin. Shame is a quiet thief. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rage. It whispers, subtly, persistently, that you are wrong for wanting what you want, that your desires make you too much, that your longing is embarrassing, that your body is only lovable when it's perfect, controlled, offered without need. So many women learned early that to be desired was power, but to express desire was dangerous. That sensuality was acceptable, as long as it wasn't messy, emotional, or vulnerable. And so they split. They became experts in performance, soft where they were told to be soft, silent where they wanted to speak. And in bed, this shame disguises itself as perfectionism. You try to be everything, pleasing, passionate, effortless. But beneath the movements, there is tension. Beneath the pleasure, there is pressure. A quiet, exhausting need to prove you are enough. But intimacy cannot grow where shame lives, because shame doesn't allow you to be present. It keeps you watching yourself from the outside, analyzing, evaluating, wondering if you're doing it right. It disconnects you from your body, your truth, your voice. And when you are disconnected from yourself, no one, not even the kindest man, can truly reach you. This isn't about blaming you for the distance. It's about naming the wound, the inherited belief that your sexuality must always be managed, pleasing, palatable, that it must be used to secure love, never to express freedom. But what if intimacy was no longer a stage? What if it became a sanctuary, a place where you didn't have to perform, but could simply be? What if the most beautiful thing you could offer wasn't a perfect body, but a present heart? Louise Hay taught us, I approve of myself, even in desire, even in vulnerability, even when you're unsure, because approval doesn't mean being flawless. It means being free. And freedom, is the beginning of true connection. When you show up without shame, you give him permission to do the same. And in that space, the old roles dissolve, the masks fall, and something real begins. Not just a touch, but a meeting. Not just closeness, but truth. There is a sacred power in speaking your soul, not polished, not rehearsed, but raw, honest, alive. Because sometimes the deepest touch is not physical, it's emotional. It's the moment you say what you've never said before. The moment you stop hiding behind smiles and start naming what lives in your chest. The moment you stop performing softness and start offering truth. So many women have been told they'll scare him away if they're too much, too emotional, too expressive, too deep. And so, they shrink, they bite their tongues, they swallow their needs, they offer touch instead of voice, hoping the message will somehow get through. But no touch can carry what only your words were meant to deliver. No gesture can replace the intimacy of a woman revealing her inner world without apology. Because here's the truth. When you speak from your soul, something shifts in the air. It's not always easy. It's not always received the way you hope. But it is always real. And in a world that teaches women to be everything but real, that's revolutionary. There is a man out there who is not afraid of your truth. But he will only find you when you begin to speak it. Not to convince. Not to be chosen. But because your voice belongs to you. Your experience belongs to you. And it deserves to be heard. By you. Before anyone else. Louise Hay said, "I express myself freely and with confidence. And that includes the tender things. The fears. The dreams. The boundaries. The grief. Because when you begin to inhabit your voice, you also begin to inhabit your power. And that power is not forceful. It's not loud. It's steady. It's magnetic. It creates a field around you. A field that invites only those who are willing to meet you at your level of truth. So if you've been touching his skin, but silencing your soul, it may be time to reverse the order, to let your words go first, to let your truth arrive before your hands do. Because the man who is meant to stay will recognize the sound of a woman who is no longer afraid to speak. There comes a moment when you stop offering your body and begin to occupy your own space. It's not an act of withdrawal. It's not coldness or punishment. It's clarity, a quiet return to yourself, a sacred choice to no longer trade pieces of your soul for fragments of affection. And in that moment, something ancient inside you exhales, as if your body, after years of overextending, finally remembers it belongs to you. So many women have given so much in the name of love. They've offered themselves not from fullness, but from hope. The hope that maybe this time, giving everything will bring something back. But the truth is, real love never requires that kind of loss. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear in order to be seen, because the most powerful thing a woman can do is take up her rightful space, not just physically, but energetically, to stop shrinking, to stop bending, to stop adjusting her essence to fit someone else's capacity. And that shift is seismic. When you stop offering your body as a gateway to your heart, and instead, let your presence speak for itself, everything changes. You're no longer performing love. You're embodying worth. A man can feel this shift, not always consciously, but instinctively. The same way he senses when a woman is trying to be chosen, he also senses when she no longer needs to be. And that presence, that grounded, unapologetic beingness, is magnetic, because it invites without chasing. It opens without losing itself. It says, "I am here, I am whole, and I will not fold myself to fit where I'm not cherished." Louise Hay reminds us, "I stand on my own 2 feet. I claim my own power. And when you do, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract not from emptiness, but from alignment. Not from longing, but from knowing. And the man who meets you in that space doesn't fall in love with your efforts. He falls in love with your essence. Because you're no longer reaching out in order to be held. You're already holding yourself. And that is what calls true surrender from a man who's ready to meet you in your fullness. Your energy is the real invitation, not your effort, not your beauty, not even your touch, but the quiet, unwavering signal you send when you believe, deeply, unshakably, that you are worthy of love, just as you are. Louise Hay reminds us, "I am worthy of love simply because I exist, not because you please, not because you prove, not because you endure, but because your presence, in its full truth, is already enough." When that belief begins to settle into your bones, the way you move through love changes. It becomes less about being chosen and more about choosing. You begin to see that the most powerful touch is not physical, it's energetic. It's the kind of presence that fills a room without words, the kind of calm that disarms defenses, the kind of self-respect that says, I know who I am, and I will not trade pieces of that for crumbs of connection. A man doesn't surrender to seduction. He surrenders to presence, to truth, to the frequency of a woman who no longer asks, Am I enough? Because she already knows. She already belongs to herself. And in that self-belonging, she becomes unforgettable. Brené Brown said, Belonging to yourself is the bravest act of love. And maybe that's what this was all about. Not just learning how to love a man, but remembering how to love yourself with reverence, with courage, with deep emotional clarity. Because when you come home to yourself, you stop begging to be seen. You stop performing for connection. You stop reaching for what cannot hold you. And instead, you become the space that holds you, fully, quietly, powerfully. And from that place, love doesn't become something you chase. It becomes something you allow. So if something in this message touched you, even softly, let it guide you to your next step. This is not the end. This is a threshold, a sacred pause in your journey of coming home to yourself. There's another video waiting for you, not just to be watched, but to be felt. When your heart is ready, click on what appears on your screen. Let your journey continue, with presence, with truth, and with you fully here.